Hi there. Welcome to part two of the Week 4 Learning Guide. Super excited to be with you, sharing some of the details for this week. This video will focus on functions and symmetry. However, if you missed any of the Week 4 videos, I will be sure to link them below in the description. As always, if this is the first time you're seeing my face, please make sure it is not the last by hitting that like and subscribe button. Well, let's go ahead and get started. I've given you a set of notes here to help you with the parabolas we're going to look at, and that is that the axis of symmetry is located there in the middle of the graph. Now, if you're wanting a hard copy of this learning guide, I'll definitely link it below. That way you can download it and follow along. Let's look at problem number one. We're looking at functions f of x and g of x. And the first thing we want to find is f minus g of x. So remember that order is important when we subtract. And so we're going to take that f of x, that 1 over 3x, and we're going to subtract the 2 over x minus 5. Now, you probably remember from work earlier that you've got to have common denominator. So the common denominator here is actually going to be the multiplication of the two fractions. So I'm going to take that first fraction and I'm going to multiply it by the x minus 5 so that we can form a common denominator. And I'm going to take the second fraction and I'm going to multiply it by the 3x. So again, we can get a common denominator here. Now let's multiply the tops. I get x minus 5 over 3x times x minus 5. And on the second one, I get 6x over 3x times x minus 5. So now you can combine these two fractions together. Make sure you look for those like terms. X minus 6x gives us negative 5x. And then we have the minus 5 left over 3x times x minus 5. Now look at this, and this is what our f minus g of x is. Now we're looking for the domain. So there's only two rules in domain. One has to do with denominators and the other has to do with square roots. This one obviously doesn't have any square roots, so we're going to focus primarily on the denominators. What we know is that denominators cannot equal 0. That's because you can't divide by 0. So I'm going to take my denominator and I'm going to say it can't equal 0. Well, that means that 3x can't be 0 and x minus 5 can't be 0. So x cannot be 0 and x cannot be 5. That is my domain for this problem. My domain is that x cannot be 0 and x cannot be 5. Now, for our next piece, we're going to do division, and I want to create a little bit more space. So let me bring in another piece of paper. I always like to have just another piece ready to go. So watch the order again here. We're doing f divided by g of x. So you're doing f divided by g of x. And if you remember, when we divide fractions, we flip the second one and we multiply. So this becomes 1 over 3x times x minus 5 over 2. Now you can multiply the top. Pretty easy, gives me x minus 5. And on the bottom, I get 6x. So I get f divided by g of x is x minus 5 over 6x. So now look at your answer, and we need the domain. Remember the two rules for domain? Square roots, denominators. Obviously, this one is the denominator. So I'm going to set my denominator and say that it cannot equal 0. So that tells me that x cannot equal 0. That is my domain for the f divided by g of x. All right, let's take a look then at number 2. Now, to do this one, I want to switch over to our graphing calculator. And if you're not currently using Desmos, I'll link it below so that you can use it. But it's a free online graphing calculator I definitely encourage you to use because you can type in 4x squared plus 25y squared equals 100, and it will graph it for you. You'll see that we get what this is called an ellipse. And then you can also hover over the points, and Desmos will tell you where the asymptotes are. So for this, sorry, not asymptotes, intercepts. So this intercept is at 0, 2, and I'm going to hover here to get that. This one is at 0, -2. Those are our y-intercepts. And then come over and hover here to get that's 5, 0. And then finally hover here for -5, 0. And that's our x-intercept. So use the Desmos graphing calculator to get a picture of what's going on. And then you identify by hovering where those intercepts are. Okay, I'm going to switch us back to our learning guide so we can look at question number 3. Now, question number 3, we provided a graph for you, and we're asking if we to determine if it is a function. So if it is a function, we talked about in part 1, we had a list of values to determine if it was a function, and we said the x's could not repeat. Well, when you're looking at a graph, you are looking for to use what's called the vertical line test. The vertical line test says if you could put a vertical line down on this graph and it only hits the graph once, then it is a function. So meaning I could put a vertical line here, I could put a vertical line here. Pretty much anywhere I would put a vertical line would only touch this graph once. That tells me this is a function. Now, let's state our domain and range. We talked about this also in part 1. I'm going to make sure those are noted as arrows. My domain, I don't have any breaks in the graph. So my domain gets to be all reals, all real numbers. For your range, remember, highlight your highest point or your lowest point and describe your y values from there. So that lowest point is at y equals 4. And I know all the y values are above that. So I'm going to say that my range is y is greater than or equal to 4. Look at your intercepts. Where does it touch the axis? Well, I don't see it touching the x-axis at all. I only see it touching the y-axis right here, and that point is at 0, 4. And then finally, any symmetry. Well, this graph can be cut in half along the y-axis. If I cut it and fold it right here, then I get y-axis symmetry. So I hope that helps with part 2 of our week 4 learning guide. As always, if you have questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below. I would love the opportunity to create more videos or concepts you're not really sure about. And as always, the biggest thanks you can say to me is to hit that like and subscribe button. So I hope this helps. Let me know if I can help any further. Bye bye for now.